Welcome to Ethos Effect.
Welcome to the Ethos Effect podcast. After building and learning from failures,
We discovered our ethos and leveraged it
to scale, sell, and build again our seven-figure businesses.
whether you're starting out or leveling up.
This podcast is your source for innovation and lasting impact. Ethos Effect podcast listeners, today we've got a good one. We've got Sonni Abatta, and what a ray of sunshine Sonni was. I have to say, I think I just met my new bestie, to be honest. So I'm definitely going to be texting her today and asking her to go out for a drink or a coffee because what a cool lady. So first and foremost, she was and is, I guess, still an award-winning journalist. She was a TV news anchor, and now she's got a podcast where she dives super deep into real topics, vulnerable topics. I really liked this episode because I think a lot of businesses miss the opportunity to really have a good media strategy. And I know for us, figuring out the media side and the getting attention and all of that came kind of late in our business, 4 or 5 years in. And I think there's an opportunity for businesses even earlier to start capitalizing on this. I know you've got some good opinions on it.
Well, I think whether or not you want to do it, it's important. Attention is really the only thing that matters. And, I've heard examples like, we're in the healthcare space. And as ridiculous as this is, if Kim Kardashian starts a healthcare business tomorrow, she's got more customers than we do. And she knows jack about it, right?
Yeah.
So it just goes to show attention sometimes is almost more important. Of course, you've seen people in all kinds of industries where they're not the best in their industry, but they get the most attention and therefore they are the most well-known. So
right.
It's something, we shied away from.
Shied away from.
Yeah, maybe me. Okay.
Yeah.
But also when we're going, we're just kind of operating.
We're just executing
the things that are important in the business. But it's all right, if we are going to be the best in our business, then we're kind of underserving ourselves by not also having a media strategy to be able to attract the customers that we want to work with.
Totally.
So totally important. But yeah, you definitely get caught up operating in the early days. So,
and then there's the confusing part of so you have social media, and then you have a website, and then you have marketing, and then you have media, and then you have events, and it's a lot. And I think Sonni does a good job of sort of breaking down what's important when it's important. She does media consulting for companies, and I could see her being very good at that. I'm already texting her about it. Yeah, she's amazing, guys. So you will learn something today. It will be applicable to your business, whether you think you're at the stage in your business or not where media is on your radar. You will learn something, and just listen with open ears because there's a lot of good stuff in this one. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Ethos Effect podcast. We're your hosts, Chelsea and Donovan Ryckis. Today, we've got a really exciting guest, Miss Sonni Abatta. She is the host of We Gotta Talk podcast, which is real talk, big topics, which we're going to get into today. Yes. Dig a little deep in this conversation, which I'm always here for. You are an Emmy-nominated journalist, an award-winning journalist. You host, you produce, you do all the things, and you know TV and media, right?
I do, a little bit.
I've heard and I've read that you've interviewed presidential candidates. You've been present in some of the largest trials. You were a news anchor in both Pittsburgh and Orlando. What have you not done, Sonni?
Oh, gosh. You know what? I look back and I hear that. I'm like, that sounds like a fun career. And I'm like,
who is that girl?
Sometimes everyone's like, put together your bio for this opportunity. And I'm like, and when you actually have occasion to sit and think about it, I'm like, it was a great run in TV for a while. Yeah, I rode in a fighter jet and with the the Blue Angels. Oh my gosh, it was a trip. Yeah, so I did some cool things. I'm going to have good stories for my kids. They don't care right now, but.
How old are they?
11, 9, and 7. A boy and 2 girls.
Aw, they will care.
Yeah.
It'll be super cool to be like, look at me, or look at mom.
Yeah, someday.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're so excited you're here. Obviously, our podcast, we do focus a lot of business, but I think there's so much we can learn, our business can learn from you on the media perspective. So why don't you start off just by telling us how you got into this career? Did you know when you were in college, I'm going to be an amazing journalist, I'm going to be on TV, and I'm going to inspire, educate, and transform people's lives?
No. Oh, no. I was just a nerdy little kid who really liked.
You were nerdy?
Right. I was so nerdy.
Math nerdy or English?
Just good
arts?
Student, very deliberate, very not very risk averse. It's interesting.
I was thinking bad style nerdy, not math nerd. I was like, what kind of nerd?
I probably had good style. Just a nerd with decent stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I have an older sister, and this is an interesting conversation too. And I think family dynamic wise, and when you have children, you begin to understand this a little bit more too. She kind of occupied the role of more of like the fun, crazy one. And so I think by nature, I'm just a more settled, calm person, but also because I had her as sort of the yin to my yang growing up, I just have been very predictable and we laugh hard about it now because we live close to each other and our children are growing up together. And, but yeah, I was, I'm very drawn to order and understanding things. I'm very detailed by nature. And so for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted to be growing up. I really have been okay as long as I can remember not having like perfect idea of who I want to be. I did know I really liked projects. I liked presenting things. I really liked the act of like gathering some things up and like telling my friends like, oh my gosh, guys, I found this, whatever. Or if it was a book report, like I liked getting up in front of the class and doing that. But I really didn't have a specific direction per se until I got into college. I went in undecided at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. And I did think for a while that I wanted to I was big into like musical theater. I like singing. I like dancing growing up. And speaking of failures or sort of changes of course, I auditioned for several conservatories as like a last minute thing when applying for college. When I say last minute, I mean a lot of these kids were studying for years, private voice lessons and dance lessons. And I just decided I enjoy this. Let me give it a try. And I did not get into the schools that I really wanted to. And I remember being devastated and being like, oh, that stinks. But I, from that experience, had time to just sit and pause and realize I think that impulse to be in front of a crowd and made more sense for me in the sort of informational perspective. So it makes sense that I went into journalism because writing has always been a home for me and my space. And so journalism allowed me to utilize that like nerdy part of me. Like I didn't want to just get up in front of people and like put on a show and dance. Right. It kind of has always been tied to, I don't know, more of like a research and thinking process. So journalism ended up being great, but I did not grow up thinking that. I did a lot of internships in college that I just happened upon, like, and I started working part-time. So I've been working since I was like 19 in the business. Wow. So I used to ride the bus to like my gigs with this production company and do all these like high school sports shows and sports shows with some of the other teams in Pittsburgh. And it just kind of happened. So I was like, I like that job. Let me try an internship. And so I kept doing internships and I interned in New York with Dateline and the Today Show. And I was like, I actually kind of like this business. Let me keep interning. So I got back to Pittsburgh and I found more.
Unpaid?
Girl, this was the early 2000s. This was like the late 90s, early 2000s. Everything was unpaid. So yeah, it just was it was fate, I think. And I'm really glad that I had that deviation from what I thought was going to be my path because I think this is where I belong in that space. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So tell us a little bit then about, you became a news anchor and that was in Orlando, right? Well, you did Pittsburgh and then Orlando.
Yeah. So I graduated and had a job at the CBS affiliate in Pittsburgh immediately. Yeah, I was the youngest person to work there for a while. I think I had done 3 consecutive internships at this station and they were like, you're a hard worker. I was there till midnight. I did not have a car. I would have my parents come pick me up from 20 minutes away. So I didn't have to ride the bus back because my campus was like through the city. And so they saw me working hard and that they relied on me for a lot of, at that time, it was post-game interviews for my sports internship or my news stuff. And they're like, I think you're a hard worker. We're going to give you this shot. We're going to activate this position we have in CBS. It's a reporter trainee, and you're going to make half of the salary of the lowest paid employee on the thing, which was like, I know. I was like, well, thank God I'm 21 because I can live at home with my parents. So they gave me that opportunity and I'm forever grateful. And I went right from like cap and gown graduation in Pittsburgh. My university was in Pittsburgh, down the street to the studio and became a full-time employee at the CBS affiliate there. And I stayed there for 6.5 years and worked my way from morning reporter, like out in the snow, being like, it's snowing, don't come outside. The snow, it's just the whole.
I'm out here, so you don't need to be here.
Yeah, exactly, right? What is it? Do as I say, not as I do.
I love the hurricane reporters for that reason. They step out there and like getting blown over. Don't come outside.
Now I think they do it just for the viral clips.
Yes, it's hilarious.
These poor kids.
It's hilarious.
So anyway, and that was there. And then I got a job in Orlando and I spent 7.5 2.5 years here. And that's the short version. But yeah, it's been a really fun ride.
Good markets. So for our listeners, there's a little something you may not know about me, which is I was a sports intern at WFTV Channel 9. Greg Wormuth hooked me up. Thank you, Greg. And it was so much fun. Yeah. So much fun. But something that I learned really quickly, so I'm honestly just living through your conversation right now of like, this could have been a different version of my life. Yeah. I'm very happy with my current life. Okay. But what I ended up learning after the internship was like, if you aren't getting a job right away, which is very unheard of. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that for everybody through my story. You usually need to go to small little towns and kind of get going and tiny markets. Like you started in massive markets. That's super impressive.
It was so embarrassing too. My first day on air was Christmas morning, the 5 a.m. broadcast, and they made me do weather. And I did not know that this would be part of my job requirement until I signed the contract. And they were like, well, we just want you to like fill in. Now,
as a meteorologist?
I couldn't call myself. It was just like a weather girl. Like back then, you didn't have to have a meteorology title. Back in my day. So what I did, but being like the totally OCD person that I am, like actual, like not saying that shticky, I took the books from first of all, I ran into the meteorologist little wing and I was like, they're making me fill in on weather. I was like, what do I do? It's 3 minutes of straight talking on TV. Wow. It's a lot.
That's a ton of time.
That's an eternity. Unscripted. So I took his books. He's like, read these. Here's the AccuWeather hotline. Every morning, get in, put your forecast together. Here's how you build the graphics. And I studied in my nerdy little way. And I read the books and I understood the basics of weather enough to put together a 3-minute thing. And when I tell you like full body sweats, I was like, I can't believe I never wanted to do weather. I never wanted any of it, but it was such a good experience because I learned the art of ad-libbing and just getting through it. I have people to this day who will message me. There's this, love him, old man on Instagram. I don't want to, I'm sure he's whatever. He's like, I remember you when you were on your first day on a weather at KDKA. I was like, I wish you wouldn't. It was horrible. But yeah, so I mean, I've been, it taught me a skill that I needed. Yes. But as soon as I was done filling in for those first 3 years, I was like, I'm done. I'm going right into news where I belong.
I know where I belong.
Yes, far away from the weather ball. Yeah. But
it
was
seems
crazy.
like there's, and I don't know if you see this in the younger population or the younger generations, there's like this unwillingness to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And Donovan and I talk about this a lot.
For sure.
We see it not with our employees now, but former employees and just in general. There's this lack of understanding of just kind of the push through and like pushing through. And I mean, it's such like a double-edged sword, right? Because you don't want to tell women or young entrepreneurs or young people in the workforce, like, you know, fucking work and like go balls to the walls and like, you know, lose your health, lose your sleep, lose all the things. But you also don't want to like baby them. Do you have any advice or like what have you seen? And now you're about to be like coaching your own kids through that eventually.
And I'm 42 now. I'm not shy about my age. And I was on the cusp on the very end of that generation of workers who, you know, we talked all unpaid internships. Mm-hmm. Like I was not paid. I wasn't even compensated for my public transportation to get there. I was like, have fun. Even in New York, like I remember getting that internship and my mom being like, well, we're gonna have to figure it out. And I don't come from means. It's not like my family was like, here you go. I mean, I worked my butt off forever. And I think I noticed the same thing as you. Mm-hmm. And what I try to instill in my kids or anyone even coming up in this industry or anything else is not necessarily, I'm not trying to push the line of, I did it, so you have to do it. But it's more like, you're going to love yourself and be so much more proud of yourself if you work for it. Like when you're given something, it's not as precious or as, you don't care for it as much as if you worked for it. Yep. And, you know, I recognized the fact that I got a golden opportunity in my job offer from college, but that didn't come as a gift wrapped, here you go. I mean, it was years of
sacrifice
and showing up to the same place at the same time. Where do you need me? What can I do for you? Do you need a coffee? Let me get that post game for you. Let me run that tape for you. And what I noticed, seems to be less of an interest, you're right, these days in proving it. But maybe if the correlation is made between, you'll feel so much better if you work hard for it.
Well, that's where confidence is built. You only build confidence by doing the things you don't think you can do.
Competence. figuring out you have competence.
Yes,
confidence.
You know, figuring out, I can do that.
Right.
I can get it done.
Right. It's huge.
Yeah, 100%. So tell us a little bit about, let's switch gears to business.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of businesses listening, and I think something that I've been hearing a lot from people kind of in our circles and about like ethos benefits and ethos effect is like, wow, your guys' media is like getting there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you know, we're a smaller business, but we've invested heavily in it, both from a time perspective and a financial perspective. And I kind of feel like after about a year of getting really strategic and like just doing the work, we're starting to figure out like what's working, what's not. I'm sure if people just worked with you, they'd probably have a much faster learning curve than we did. So like, what advice would you give to businesses out there that are like trying to figure out what their media play is?
Oh gosh. Well, you guys are doing a great job. I have to second that. And you're working with an amazing company. So every company has this, every person has a story, every company has a story. I happen to believe, especially being on the other end of a lot of PR pitches through my whole career, that there are hooks that you can kind of dig into, whether it's your company ethos or philosophy that you can really use to drive marketing materials, or a personal story, a client. There's something about your business or you, if you're the business, that makes it engaging and worth investing in from the customer's perspective. So I think doing the back work of brand discovery is huge. And that's a mission statement, right? That's a true understanding of the role you fulfill. And it's your audience. I call it when I work with clients, like your audience avatar, like who is your client? Now, it might be different for people who serve a broad demographic, but there are some things in common that your client or your customer is looking for, right? It might not be, like in my case with podcasting, it's probably more specific by age and, you know, gender and things like life experience. But for bigger companies, it might just be something as simple as how you best serve them that other people don't. Or what is that one thing that they're looking for? I'm looking for this type of planning or this, whatever it is. So understanding that, I'm a big believer in knowing who you are as a brand or a company before you get to the media and marketing, which then becomes, that's the fun stuff, right? That's the branding from like, what does your logo look like? Or your colors, how do you want to show up on social media? What font do you like? I mean, that's the fun stuff, but you have to understand the need you fill and who your company is, what your philosophy is, what your ethos is. I was saying before the show, I love, the name of the company, the podcast, for that reason, because it taps into that. I think that's always step one though. And there is some, there in a more detailed sense, there is some work to be done too about making your message brief. Like brevity is key.
Oh my God, please help me with that. I literally hired coaches to be, because I'm like, I can't shut up.
Well,
sometimes.
That's not a bad thing. I mean, and you remember like when you would do book reports when you were little and they'd have your brainstorm page, that has value. So you need to get that out and you sit down with someone who's an expert or maybe someone else from your company who works in marketing or something, get it all out, but then refine it and talk through it and get to those 2 or 3 points, how you deliver, who you are, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like a funnel.
Do you feel like, so I was on a media call recently and the lady that was coaching me said, you want your intro to be 8 to 10 seconds of
intro for
like if you were going to be on
intro
TV.
to media. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if I'm being interviewed by a reporter on TV, because we're doing some pretty crazy stuff right now with like documentaries and awards and we're getting on TV and we want to make sure we're prepared. So I have this lady helping and she's like, 8 to 10 seconds. I'm like, I can get my name out.
I think you did 2 minutes and she was like, you need to get that to 10 seconds.
Yeah, it was probably like 60 seconds. I'm like, I'm fixing American healthcare and I'm doing this. And then she was like, whoa, so you agree, 8 to 10 seconds?
Yes.
And it's possible.
Elevator pitch. It's elevator pitch. It's totally possible. I mean, it's work and it's time, but you guys, I mean, spend your when you're driving the car, talk about, get all of that, get all the long stuff out, long sentences and the complicated, complex thoughts out. And you'll find that the more you talk about it, the more it refines itself. And also what I suggest too, is this is a really helpful exercise, is talk with people who know your company, but don't know it that well. Hey, what do I do? Yeah. What do I do what do you think I do every day? Ask your kids. Something, if they're old enough, what I find is that when you're trying to hone in on branding or what it is you deliver, sometimes your current clients or customers or the people closest to you who are familiar enough with your business know you not better than you do, but they know, they pick up on things from that end. Because inside, we're all tied up in our own thoughts. Right. But ask those people. So sometimes when I do a rebrand, I'll email my friends like, what are the 3 things you think of when you listen to my podcast or when you think of me and that helps me because there's, that sort of customer facing perception that I think is also important to the brand.
Yeah. And it usually just simplifies. Like you're going to get something back that's so simple.
Right.
It's Occam's razor.
Mm-hmm.
That
the simplest answer is often or the most realistic answer is the most obvious or simplest. Yeah.
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 100%.
I kind of think I always go back to like, if you can't explain something simply, you probably haven't understood it enough.
That's a really
you
good
haven't
point.
learned it well enough.
Mm-hmm.
And just that idea of, that's kind of what set us down the rebrand to begin with, because you were like, if we talk to all of our clients or even all of our employees, they would all have different things. So we had to
you need
kind of get
2
that
people.
in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the other thing I think of is like, hey, I would have wrote you a shorter letter, but I didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because simplifying ideas is honestly very time consuming.
Right.
It's easier to put more out there.
And it's like, I feel like at least I'll just speak to my own perspective. Like we solve a lot of problems in a lot of different ways. And like literally every single client we have, we're solving the problem of healthcare inflation for them differently. Mm-hmm. And so it's like when you're asked, like what's the one thing somebody can do to lower their healthcare costs? And you're like, well, it really depends on blah, 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 blah. So it's, I personally have a lot of work to do in that area, but it's super exciting. To just like to be at this stage in our business where like that is a priority and that is something that I can create time and have the resources to really do.
Right.
So let's talk about like events. Like if a business is going to host an event of some kind or a showing or do some type of a masterclass or a recording, like they've figured out the branding and now they're bringing this message to the world.
Right.
What are some common mistakes that you see in that?
So I've worked with companies in the capacity of live events, live streamed events, taped recordings and things that they're using for marketing. And I will say it all does come back to simplifying, shortening, and keeping the show, or we'll just call it that for shorthand, dynamic. So, for example, I worked with one company here, and again, it was a live stream because of COVID, and it was this program they put together, and they said, this is the script. Our marketing team put it together. And I open it up, and I start to read it. And I'm like,
oh God,
this is 6 minutes of nonstop me talking, reading. Like, I know you didn't think of this. No one wants to hear me talk that long. And I physically can't without like stopping. So, you get in there and you say, okay, let me rework this. And having experience in TV news, the one skill set we use daily is short, pithy writing and understanding the lead in news is that impactful story, right? So I don't know, say it's, a car drove over a cliff. Whatever it is. Like you don't get on the news and say, and everyone's okay in this hypothetical. I don't want to depress anyone. No one was hurt in this hypothetical retelling. So it's not like today at 4:00 there was a Chrysler Pacifica driving on I-95, and all of a sudden a cliff. It's not that. It's a driver's worst nightmare. Today, and it's not even like today. If you get to it, it's not like I don't need the buildup. I need to know why I'm here. Time is precious, and I need impact, and I need brevity. And I've found that with live events, with newscasts, if you give people the feeling they're wasting their time, even for a second, and not even in a disrespectful way, but if you give them the opportunity for their mind to wander, they're going to just do this. They're going to just, you don't want that. So you keep it short, you get to the point, even verb tense is important. Like we write in present tense in TV news for a reason. It's not like yesterday, Joe was driving and he drove off a cliff. It's like, it's present tense. It's happening right now, breaking news. That's why that language is like that in news and in media. I mean, it pulls you in.
It does.
So everything from brevity to verb tense to breaking the show up visually. So in this particular case, it was an hour-long show and there were guests coming in. And so we broke up that first long talking segment by throwing in some sound bites. And then I said, why don't we bring Joe on and he can talk about the first segment. Let's break up that. And then we transition to another thing. It's almost like you're taking your viewers or listeners on a journey. You're the guide. Well, you don't want to stop in one zone for too long because they're going to start looking at the sky. I mean, you got to keep them moving, and you're in charge of that. And it's very empowering to like walk people through that moment, because that's when your message resonates. You're actually walking them through a whole, whatever it is, a live streamed event or an in-person event. You're the tour guide for them. So keep it moving.
So question, because we're actually working on this right now, right? So we produced this healthcare documentary. It's called It's Not Personal. It's just healthcare. A la Godfather, right? It's not personal. It's just business.
I love that. I was going to say, I like that
just
title.
Healthcare instead. Really great. It's going to be on streaming platforms later this year. But right now we're working on getting it out basically, to our market, to our clients, our prospective clients. And it is not a documentary of just Chelsea and I. It's industry veterans across the country. Also, attorneys, clinicians, people in the benefit space, just kind of explaining the problem. So we're working on a launch event here, and there's a couple other producers in the country. And what I've seen all the other ones do is they did like an actual full screening, right? Which is great. But like if I'm considering, I'm like, all right, our goal is actually to get some attention, recognition locally from the press, right? So we want the media to be like, there's this documentary, here's what it talks about. Right. So my thought process was, in the spirit of brevity and kind of talking about what's going on, is we are kind of designing it to be like a 20-minute preview. And then we're actually going to feature one of our local employers that kind of went through this process.
Oh, that's interesting.
So like a local employer that could kind of be the focus. Is that kind of am I thinking about it the right way about like, getting attention, getting a story across, rather than just sitting everybody down.
So end goal is media and press coverage, or end goal? I think
it feels self-indulgent to be like, come here and watch an hour and a half of my documentary, right?
Okay, so here's what I would say. Tell me why I need to care. Like when I get PR pitches, I want to know why I or my listeners should care. So for that, and I'm being very generic here, so I'm not sure if this is the right angle, but I'm going to use it for the sake of conversation. When you're promoting that, even to a local news station or to a local publication for coverage, it's not, I have this documentary and it explores, blah, blah, blah. No, it's, did you ever get a bill in the mail for $10,000 and you're thinking, what just happened? I mean, I know that I got it, I just had something not covered by insurance and I'm like, why? Did you, like, that's what you tap into, that, the hook, the human experience that your not professional world, but that normal average person has with that experience. Because ultimately, right, the goal is to get butts in seats to see it. Right. And tell those people, not only the industry veterans and experts, but tell the normal people why they should care. You got to find that hook. You got to find why. I think, and I do like the idea of maybe the preview for 20 minutes and butt it against a 20-minute or 30-minute roundtable with this guy. And then you show up as the expert moderating the conversation. Hey, we just watched preview this. There's so much more to come. But let's dive into like why this is the reality of our industry right now. Right. That way the people attending get the benefit of not only the preview, which is, interesting artistically, but also they get that expertise. Yeah. If that makes sense, Well,
and the people attending are going to be local employers. So the hook is essentially 180 million Americans rely on their employers to make their healthcare decisions. And yet 220 million people with health insurance in this country are bankrupt, medically bankrupt. Yes. And employers have been told this huge lie that there's nothing they can do about the cost of their healthcare. And it's simply not true. And this documentary pulls back the curtain. Yeah. So that's kind of the hook, is like there's this huge lie that everybody just believes that everyone else is profiting off of. Right. So we're getting employers in and then showcasing a local employer who's changed the story.
By working with you? Like where do you guys come in? That's what I would want to know too.
We're the consultants. Right. And like, what's really interesting, so we help employers basically design their healthcare programs where we're eliminating the fraud, waste, and abuse so they can give their employees affordable healthcare long term.
Okay. So it's like we fix healthcare.
Pretty much. Yeah, for employers and employees. And the documentary is basically, so there's like a ton of fraud, waste, and abuse that happens in this industry, which I can imagine, and your own experience is literally things that we deal with every single day. Like it's insane and way worse than that. Right. So essentially what we do is we like peel back the curtain. We show them, well, this is why everything's fucked up. Right. And this is how we can fix it super easily. And then we do. And then people can have affordable, quality healthcare.
So your market and your audience are industry professionals, generally. Like you're pitching to them services.
Executives,
employers,
employers,
CFOs,
right.
HR.
So you guys are in the interesting position of sort of, I don't want to say like pitching as in like whatever, but we'll just use that you want to appeal first to them so that can like bleed down to the consumer. But if you were trying for the documentary, you're trying to get regularized. So in that case, like think about who your audience is too, and write to them. Like if I'm talking to TV professionals or media professionals, I'm going to talk in totally different jargon, and we have shorthand. But if I'm talking to like a lot of these companies that I work with, I have to like dial it down even more. They don't know what a rundown is. They don't know how to produce. So I think it's always valuable if you're putting messaging of any form out there, is understand very clearly who you're talking to for every instance. So if it's a professional thing or if it's a blend of both, client facing and professional, and tailor the message, because they're going to be there for different reasons and they're going to care for different reasons. And it might also be smart to silo your industry specific events just for those people, right? And not try to get the people who would watch, say, the documentary in the same building as the people who would purchase or work with your services. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think audience is important. That's the takeaway.
No, I love
that makes sense. Yeah.
And then, so walk us through like somebody, a business hires you, you help create this event. What do you see? And maybe this is a very leading question. I feel like follow-up is always after an event. And I don't know that you consult on that necessarily, but like, what do you think? Because I think businesses look at everything like, okay, so I have social media, I have marketing, I have PR, now I have a media consultant. Like they're probably really overwhelmed. And like, how do they filter through, like, who do they hire? When do they hire them? What's the most important thing to do? What's the difference between LinkedIn and a media consultant and all the things,
I think there's definitely experts for every specific field.
Okay.
I think the language you speak on social media is going to be different than the language you would use for a live event that you would use for LinkedIn. I mean, I can't even touch the online stuff like the funnel. I don't even know what it means. Like get these people here to buy this. Like it's like alien language to me. So understanding that there are experts in everything, unfortunately, it's just the truth. So I don't know.
Expensive.
It gets very expensive. So maybe, I have not yet found a company who is fluent in all the languages. Put it that way. Maybe someday there will be some giant media conglomerate, but for now, there are really amazing experts in each field. And whether it be someone who is more in tune with live events and sort of in-house marketing, putting together like a video series for your employees, whatever. That might be a different person than social media, right? Yeah. And there are a lot of agencies that do that really capably. So interview them, like really see. I have thoughts on social media in general, but that's for another podcast. It can be really good or it can be just like, and then, so I don't know. I personally don't know of anyone who does it all, but maybe, again, figure out where you want to show up and make the investment there. I will say the umbrella thing needed over top of all of this is branding and messaging.
Yes.
Understanding your company.
It's such a hard thing to lead into because you're right. It's first a person that has the desire or the willingness to get uncomfortable for the media press, then getting their branding, their story in line, and then kind of routinely getting it out there to be interesting enough for press and media to actually pick up.
So hot.
It's quite a journey because I feel quite uncomfortable with it too. I realize the need, like it's not something I want to do.
Right.
Like I'd be happy being rich and anonymous.
Yeah.
Spoken
but like a true man. We're all let me put on my lipstick and talk about it.
But it's like the truth is like if you want to create the impact in your business, like you kind of people have to know you first,
they
right?
Do.
So like I heard this really interesting thing, and it's always the simple things. Like I think we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. So I was listening to this media guy at a conference, and he basically went through this exercise of like, how many people do you know? And you're like, I don't know, like 75 people. Like, how many people do you actually know? Right. And he kind of just went through this whole thing, and he's like, the amount of people that can know you is unlimited. And you're like, oh shit. You're right. I do need to do this.
Yeah.
Like I do need to do this. People need to know who we are. They need to know why we do business, how we do it.
And they need like, not to get like frou-frou, but they need a feeling too, right?
Yes.
They need that's
connection.
Connection. That's why we're brand loyal to certain things,
True.
And it's going to hit differently for like, a product I use every day versus a service, but it is still a feeling, right? So, and it feels self-indulgent, doesn't it? I don't know how old you guys are, but I do straddle that sort of that bridge, that gap from like old school, just get in and do your job.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, look at me doing my job. Right. You know, it's just like,
how cute am I?
Yes. It's just like, it's uncomfortable. And there's so many times where I'm like, ooh, even as a professional in media that I'm like, cringe. But I have learned that you do have to continuously remind people of who you are, who your company is. It might feel like you're posting the same thing on social media 7 out of 10 days because you're putting it out there, but the chances of everyone's following you, seeing every one of those is very slim. So you do have to beat the drum a little bit. Keep telling me who you are. Keep telling me what you do. Make it short, make it brief, make it sexy. We always say in TV, make it sexy. Oh. I don't care, like not literally, but like make it interesting. Like I don't care if it's not interesting. Like I will read PR pitches and I'm like,
bye.
Yes, no. Yeah, I mean, you can tell right away whether there's value in something. And it's like you're whittling away. It's a constant refinement, but you'll get there with practice. Mm-hmm. You just have to keep telling who you are.
Something that I keep taking away from our conversation is just like showing up and doing the work. And so back at the end of April, I won an award called Advisor of the Year. And it's one of like the highest honors in our industry.
It's awesome.
It was super cool. And it was, this big event and all these things. And then afterwards, leading up to that point for the last few years, I've been very active on social media, showing up consistently, doing the videos, doing the work. And literally right after that, I was like, oh my God, everyone's looking at me. Wow. And then like normally like I love the camera. I love the spotlight. I have no problem, taking the attention. But I like whittled.
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting sick and there was all these things that happened, but it was like convenient exexcuses for me to just like hide for literally 3.5 weeks.
Yeah. It could feel overwhelming, right?
Yeah. And I was like, wow, I didn't expect that to happen to me because I like it so much. So I can't even imagine how, other people would feel. Like you kind of put yourself out there and then you're like, oh, fuck, everyone actually looked and saw. And now I need to hide because what if I'm not as good as they all said I was? And let me just go run away for a minute. So I really applaud you for just like doing the work and showing up no matter what, because that consistency piece is absolutely different.
It's the hardest piece too.
Right.
Because it feels redundant to you. It feels like, how many more times do I have to get on this platform and
tell people who I am? And,
yeah. But there is so much benefit and so much upside to just being consistent with your branding and being consistent in who you are. And the upside is if it's in alignment with who your company really is or who you really are, it's not that hard, Right. I mean, it's hard. I shouldn't say that. It's still hard.
No, you're right, but, though. It's authentic.
It's authentic.
And it'll come naturally as opposed to feeling forced and like a job.
Right.
100%.
The only things that make it feel easier for me is one, the fact that like what we talk about, like nobody knows it better than me, right? So there's the confidence, the competence that builds the confidence in it. Like I know my shit. And then the other thing is like, it's always not like, look at us, but look at the problems in the industry, look at our clients that are doing this because they're doing the hard work. Like we're just guiding them, right? They're taking the responsibility of being a large employer and doing all that kind of stuff. So we can kind of, for me, I just step back and I'm like, these are the things that are wrong in this industry and this is how it affects people. And then these are people that are doing it right.
Right.
And that's when I feel better, like, because I do not like the attention piece, right?
Yeah.
So instead, I'm just like pushing it out.
Well, maybe your sweet spot then is being the one who kind of digs into those customer stories or client stories,
for sure.
And like highlighting those and, and
that's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be a lot of that too. Yeah. Like showing people how you fix things. Like this is it. And can you, again, just reminding people, look, today's Monday. We've did this again. Like we're so great.
Another problem.
Yeah, fix it.
Yeah.
It's just
another Monday, another solution.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, something as simple as that, just again, back to that reminding people, your company better than anyone. And you're just going to have to keep telling people that there's so much noise in the world. You kind of need to keep talking about it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I appreciate about your podcast is the authenticity and the vulnerability. And when you're talking about noise, right? There's so much noise. And I feel like your podcast just cuts through it. And I hope that our branding does that. Like that's something I'm taking also away from this conversation is just like brevity and cutting through that noise. And I really respect your brand and all the things you're doing and the hard conversations you're having and the people you're helping. What is your ethos that drives all of that good work?
I am a bit of I should be brief here and take my own advice. Just helping people be better. I think we're at a time where there's a lot to take in. And what I hope with my podcast is that it teaches people how to listen, that it teaches tolerance and kindness. And there was a lot of opportunity for people to believe different things these days or feel strongly in different directions. But what I hope it does is it makes people pause and listen and learn how to live in a world that is not like you sometimes. Like there's this little mug I saw, it says break the echo chamber, like getting comfortable being uncomfortable. It's like I'm a little bit of an idealist, and I do, I always say that although my ethos and my podcast is bringing people together in conversation, I'm not naive enough to truly believe that everyone's going to agree on everything. But what I do know from personal experience and what my job has taught me, because I had to interview so many people that I didn't agree with for years. And we're talking about like the old school, new school. Like I didn't get there and stomp my feet and be like, you don't think the same thing about gun rights that I do. I'm not doing this interview. Like, no, I'm not going to be a baby about, like, I show up respectfully. My job taught me you show up, you ask questions, you understand to the best of your ability. You may not land on their side even after an hour of really deep conversation, but you show respect to your fellow humans by showing up, break through your echo chamber, break through your belief system. No one's asking you to be converted, but we are asking you to tap into that higher version of yourself where you can listen and coexist. And I always say this because it's true. Some of the people that I love the most in my life, I have very different beliefs from, and that's family and friends. And what I hope is to teach the world that we can coexist. There are some basic things that I think are right and wrong, but at the very bottom of the pile. But our world needs more of that. I need more of like, tell me why you feel that way, not I don't want to hear it. Like we need more of welcoming in, because the danger with social media is that we're all being inundated with so much information. It's really solidifying our belief systems to a dangerous extent where it's making us wall off.
And divisive.
Right. Making our circle smaller. But we have to resist that urge. You have to break through your echo chamber, break through that need to feel
right.
Yeah. And like coddled and
understood.
Boosted. Yeah.
And heard, like, listen, how about instead of, there's all this like, this amplification of voice when I could not agree more. Like we're in a time where we need to listen.
Yeah.
No, that's so well said. And I freaking love the breaking through the echo chamber.
Thanks. It's really uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I even just, to bring it back to business, I look at LinkedIn, and I know we talk about this quite a bit, Donovan, but like depending on the conversations you're participating in on any social media, there's an algorithm that's just going to show you more of it.
Right.
And like a lot of the times on LinkedIn, I'm seeing the same shit from the same people, the same conversations. And I'm like, aren't we all here to talk to employers?
Right.
Aren't we here to fix a problem for the 181 million Americans relying on their employers? Why are we talking to each other?
Right. That's true.
Why are we fighting?
Right.
And disagreeing? Like we need to talk to someone else.
Yeah.
But no, the work you're doing is amazing. Where can our listeners find you if they want to engage?
Yeah. On all of the social platforms at Sonni Abatta, which is SONNI ABATTA. The podcast is called We Gotta Talk. It's on every platform. And where else? I started a Substack because I'm a glutton for punishment. And I just like the long format of it. So anywhere you could just search the name, and I'm sure all of the social handles will pop up and everything. But the podcast is called We Gotta Talk. And the blog is We Gotta Talk. So anything that I do, I try to break down into a blog post and kind of put it on there too. And I'm a one-woman team at the moment. Ooh. I've like really, really streamlined. So maybe it's not as updated as frequently, but a couple times a week it's updated. So
that's super cool. We'll have to have you come back in and teach us how to streamline these things, because I know operationally and those efficiencies, it's a lot of work to nail down a good process. So
I'm happy to do that.
Awesome.
I nerd out on that stuff.
I figured. Well, it was so good having you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for this opportunity, guys.
Thanks, Sonni.